Hello and welcome to my little channel. My name is Thomas Alexander and today we want to go through a paper that has made the rounds recently. It's called The Jewish Serpent King in the Dome of the Rock by Deus. And therein, well, he makes a lot of claims about the Dome of the Rock and we want to see what's behind that. So this is already my second take. I already did a recording last night. I amassed 3.5 hours of raw footage. And then I found out that the sound wasn't there. Anyway, so in order to not lose much more time, let's jump straight to it. Now I will go through the paper with you together, but I will jump over a lot of parts. So I will only focus on the things that are of relevance when it comes to the Dome of the Rock, its dating, its history, and so on. I will not go through the theology which Deus proposes lies behind the Dome of the Rock. For him it's sort of a conspiracy by a small Jewish elite who wants to keep humanity down, and the Dome of the Rock is sort of an element in their plan. To be honest, I don't find much to agree with there. But then again, I invite you to read the paper for yourself and come up with your own opinion. Don't listen to me. Form your own opinion. That's always the best way forward. Here we will only look at the Dome of the Rock. Now, this is what AJ wants to show throughout his paper. And I'm going to quote, "The importance of the mosaics in the Dome of the Rock could not even have been overlooked by a casual Muslim visitor. After all, it is from this very spot that Prophet Muhammad is said to have ascended to heaven. The moment that these mosaics would have been created, they would naturally have stoked curiosity in any alert visitor, and every visitor. Nobody who carefully studies the inscriptions can conclude that their creation lay before the Crusades. They are so offensive for Christian ears that their destruction during the Crusades would have been assured." And to comment on this, I think AJ definitely has a point here. I think in general he's asking the right questions. It's just that he jumps to conclusions that are absolutely not warranted, and we will see that as we go through the paper. But yeah, the question is definitely worth asking. So how is it possible that the inscriptions are survived the Crusaders? And maybe I should give you a little bit of a background. So the inscriptions we're talking about here, or AJ is talking about here, they go along the above these arches here, along the ambulatory, right underneath the roof. And there is there's a lengthy inscription. I did go over it in a few of my previous videos, so I will not delve into the inscriptions themselves in this video. But to make it really short, the point of these inscriptions are the nature of Jesus Christ. It's all about Christology. And the builder of the Dome of the Rock, or at least the person who made these inscriptions, he wanted to transport a message that Jesus was only a man and not the Son of God. That he was a prophet and the messenger of God and the Messiah, but he was all of that while being human, not divine. And so this theology that is transported in those inscriptions indeed goes totally against the theology of the Crusaders, who were Latin Christians, who were Trinitarians, who believed that Jesus was God. So it's a good question to ask. Now, when it comes to the history as I think what happened, that's going to be dealt with in another video. So in this video, I will try to make a case against what Deus is presenting here. So I'm not going to put forward alternative theories. I'll just look at his theory and see how far that takes us. But I will then cover this question and others in upcoming videos. All right. So let's move on. These mosaic inscriptions are planted evidence, backdated for the purpose of supporting the formation of communal memory. So that's the claim that H.A. Deus makes, and which he wants to support throughout this paper. In now discovered primary evidence, it turns out that a curious visitor read back the content of the dedicatory inscriptions and took a transcript in Arabic, only that it happens in unexpected ways during a time far from any suspicion of monumental fraud. Yes, he is also the first to notice it. So this is the most important piece of evidence that AJ puts forth in the paper. Here he teases it a little bit. Towards the very end of the paper, he will then delve into it a bit more, and then we shall see what's really behind it. Maybe one more comment regarding the inscription. So one thing I did mention just now is that apart from the messages about Christology, the inscription also contains a dedication. And it says that the dome was built in 691 AD, and that it was built by Caliph al-mamun. Caliph al-mamun, he was a caliph in the 9th century, so he couldn't have built it in the 7th century. And if you look at this inscription, you can also see that the name of al-mamun is squeezed in there, and they're using slightly different tiles in the mosaics. So it's clearly a later addition. Initially, there must have been another name there, and the name which is connected with the Dome of the Rock is Abd al-Malik, who was caliph at the time when this dome was supposedly being built. And that's something which AJ, of course, disputes. Quote, two structures were on the Temple Mount at the end of the 7th century, the Sufyanid Mosque to the east of and the Marwanid Synagogue to the north. No evidence of a building over the Dome of the Rock exists, but a third structure is likely. Then the next thing he wants to show is that after the earthquake from 846 AD, between 870 and 897, a first prototype was built over the foundation stone, emerging simultaneously with tradition. Before 985 AD, the Dome of the Rock is attested to be octagonal. The next point he wants to show is the Al-Aqsa Mosque is at its current position no sooner than in the mid-12th century. The mosaics on the inner octagonal originate between 1523 and 1543 AD. A dedicatory inscription from the same pretended to be Umar's. So Umar is another name which is associated with the Dome of the Rock. According to legend, Umar found the foundation stone, so the rock over which the dome has been built. And during Umar's time, there's also reports of construction works and also of a wooden building that was erected on the Temple Mount. So that's how Umar is connected in the tradition to the Dome of the Rock. Now, AJ is saying that initially Umar was believed to have been the builder of the Dome of the Rock itself. Alright, continuing. It is possible that the Dome of the Rock was raised first and that the Al-Aqsa Mosque was then built also. A complete replacement of the drum was commissioned in 1720 by Ahmed III and finished before 1744 AD. Abd al-Malik's dedication is a cover-up executed at the same time. The cupola was completely replaced under Sultan Mahmud II after 1817 and before 1833. The mosaics on the drum are from this time, and al-Mamun's corrections from 1853 to 1857. So this is a bold claim by H.A. Deus. He basically says that everything about this dome is a forgery, that the inscriptions which claim to be from 691 are indeed from the 19th century, or a mixture of from the 18th and the 19th century. And yeah, we shall see if he has a point here. No, but let's first go to this bit here. So here AJ is quoting from a pilgrim's report from around 670 AD. So in 670, everybody agrees that the Dome of the Rock was not yet built, because we've also read I've told you about the dedication in there. It is claimed that it was built in 691. Indeed, most scholars today believe that it was either completed in 691 or building started in 691 and then it was completed a few years later. So, but around that time, and definitely not during 670. So here we are all in agreement. Now, what did this pilgrim, this alcove, actually say about the Temple Mount? So here AJ quotes from the pilgrim's report. Quote, "In that famous place where once stood the magnificently constructed temple near the eastern wall, the Saracens now frequent a rectangular house of prayer, which they have built in a crude manner, constructing it from raised planks and large beams over some remains of ruins. This house can, as it is said, accommodate at least 3,000 people." End quote. So based on this quote, AJ comes to the conclusion that the building alcove is talking about must have been standing in that red area on the map, that, or on the picture, on the aerial picture which he shows us. So here. Why? Because alcove says it was built near the eastern wall, and the dome. If you look at the Temple Mount, like if the whole area, the dome is more towards the west of the Temple Mount, so it has to be east. And he thinks that the building had to be in one line with the rock, because the rock had this religious significance. Okay, sounds reasonable enough, but then if you read it again, note how alcove is not saying that the structure is right at the eastern wall. It says near the eastern wall. What's the difference here, right? So near the eastern wall, at the eastern wall, so definitely close there. Well, it depends on the frame of reference. If alcove was standing on the rock when he said that, then obviously AJ would be correct. Like from the perspective of the rock, near the eastern wall would be roughly where his rectangle is. So that would be fine. But that frame of reference isn't given in the quote. So I was curious and I looked it up myself. And here we have an edition of Alcove's Pilgrimage, which was published by the Palestine Pilgrims Text Society. And let's see what he actually wrote. He writes, "All these sacred places we have mentioned lie beyond Mount Zion, whence a swelling of the ground lessening towards the north stretches. In the lower parts of the city, where the temple was close to the wall on the east, and was connected with the city itself by a bridge for the crossing of any, is now a square building apparently capable of holding 3,000 men, which the Saracens frequent for prayer. It is rudely built, raised on boards and great beams above the remains of ruins." So what we can see here is that we are not here in the frame of reference on the Temple Mount itself, but we are in the lower parts of the city. From the lower parts of the city, the original temple. Now he's not talking about this building. He says the original temple, the Temple of Solomon, that was to the east from here, and in that place, the Saracens built this crude building. Now, from the lower part of the city, the entire Temple Mount is to the east. And indeed, if we think about where the original temple was, in fact, it is believed to have been built on top of the rock itself. So where the Dome of the Rock now stands. So one possibility is that indeed this structure, this wooden structure, was built on top of the rock. Some scholars also argue that Alcove is referring to Solomon's palace, not the temple, and the palace would have been along the southern wall. So it's also a possibility that this building was built along the southern wall. But it's very unlikely that it's in the place where H.A. Deus puts it, because Arkulf makes it clear that he's talking about the original temple, not this structure, when he gives the reference. So it says to the east, near the eastern wall, where this temple was. So it can actually only be on top of the rock or on the southern end of the Temple Mount. The entire Temple Mount is east of the lower city. So that's actually not a big deal regarding his main claims, right, where this wooden structure was built. However, this already shows us how AJ works. He's taking something out of context and reinterprets it, misinterprets it, and comes up to completely wild conclusions here.